So we're on to the darts now. We're going to be putting the darts on the 2 exterior main panels, the 2 interior main panels, and the interior slip pocket. Grab your main panel piece. Now I've put a dot there to show you where to make your mark. Don't cut the dart out, because we had some problems when we were testing and I didn't sort of let some of my testers know, and they cut it out. Then they cut the fabric out, and that's actually where the stitching line should go. So the gusset was out a little bit, but once we figured that out, we decided that altogether that this would be the best option to make sure that people do not cut that dart out. So you grab your pen and make a hole through the circle at the top. Mark that on your pattern. I better make sure it's exactly right. Don't rip your paper like I did. Okay, let's see if that is about there. Then we're going to mark down at the bottom. The other one. We've got to make sure these are in the right spot too when sewn, because it will affect the gusset. Get your ruler. I'll use my plastic ruler for this one. And my fabric pen, I think. Okay, so grab your pen and your ruler and go from that point down to the first mark on the edge, then down to the other one. Do that on your other corner too. And when we go to sew, we're going to fold over, because notice I don't cut out any of the foam either, because I did try that on one of my first ones and I didn't like how it sewed up the side. It sort of left a little bit of a gap, so now I stitch the foam together too, and it actually worked out better and neater. Okay, so make sure those lines match on both sides. I have a clip, or you can use a pin. Take that over to your machine. Stitch from that edge, start from the outer edge. You can back stitch on this one. Go all the way down to your point. Check as you go to make sure your point is lining up. And run straight off the edge and cut a couple of long threads. And I usually tie them down so they don't come undone. This will stop it puckering on your dart on the front. It's a little lesson that I learnt when making clothing. So once I've done that, I'll meet you over at the machine and we'll stitch them together. Okay, so we're sewing our darts now. You're going to start from the raw edge, follow that line right down to the point. Back stitch at the beginning. I'll just check to make sure that your fold is still down on that point. Because it's such a small bag, it's very noticeable if your darts don't match. So pull that out a little and give yourself a little bit of a tail. I like to tie them down. I know this is time consuming, but I mean, everything good is. So you just got to have patience, and then you know this isn't going to come undone. Trim your first tails down. And look at that, a really nice dart. So just trim your excess down to about 1/4 inch. I'm going to finish with the rest of my darts and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so you've done all your darts on all your lining pieces too, and your slip pocket. You've joined your slip pocket together, pressed it over and top stitched along the top. Now we're going to join it to one of the interior main panels. I like to do it because there's all these darts. Line up all your darts. Oh, I haven't trimmed that one. Just trim that one down. And the other one. Okay. All my pocket ones are trimmed. They're all joining up, as you can see. Yeah. So once you feel good enough where they go, grab your pin, put a pin right next to the dart. Do that to both your darts. Then we go up the side because we're going to baste it down the sides and along the bottom. You could probably baste it all the way around. Just to hold it in place. Make sure that's all even. Looks good to me. Okay, I'm going to take it over to the machine and baste it to the interior lining piece. Okay, so we're basting the slip pocket to the interior main panel. I would do that probably because the seam allowance is 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch. We've got plenty of wiggle room, so you could do that at about just in between, say, 1/8 and 1/4 inch. Take your time, making sure you don't bunch any of your fabric up. So I push those darts back towards the wrong side, makes it a lot easier to sew, and it stretches your fabric out so you don't get any of those little gathers that can happen when you're sewing a couple of layers together. You can see I'm sewing straight over my pins. I've always sewn over my pins. When they're like this, I do. If I remember, I try to take them out. But I was always taught you could sew over them, and I've actually never had a problem. And my machine tends to, if it touches one of the pins, it just slides off to the side. Okay, so trim that down, your basting stitch. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is the flap. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show you how I baste my, when I use the machine, baste the flap to the back panel. I start in a few stitches from the edge because I don't want to move the flap down further and take it away from the center. Sometimes it will move on you, so I try and get on there and it's not moving. You can also, if you're worried about it moving or your machine will move, will slide it, you can also move the flap back about 1/8 of an inch, and sometimes when it does push it forward, it'll push it back into the right spot. Okay, so that's now basted to your main panel. Okay, so you've attached your connectors and on your exterior gusset, and we're going to attach the gusset now to the exterior panel. I'm using the front one with the turn lock on it. Now we're supposed to actually start from the middle, so I've marked the middle on my gusset and I've marked the middle of my main panel, and I'm just going to line them up, and then this gives us a point to work from. So just put a clip there, maybe push your darts in, that'll work a bit better, a lot easier to control. So then go straight up to the top, and you are going to then put a clip at the top of the gusset and on the other one too, on the other side. Now we can work on easing in the sides of the gusset. It shouldn't be a problem though, because this is measured exactly and it fits really good along that line. So don't worry if you have a little bunching of that as you go around corners, because that will be a little bit extra, because that area around there is bigger, so it's going to be tight on those edges, the main panel on that area, sorry. Okay, well, now see I've pushed the dart back in, because you've got to slip it over that corner. So you just maneuver it as you go around, and you'll find the easiest way to put it on. I've done a lot of gussets when there's been darts, and they're actually my favorite because they fit really well. More clips. Over to the other side, push that dart back in. As you can see, it's just slipping straight on there, nice and neat. If you've done your darts correctly and haven't cut them out, and you've sewn them the way the pattern says, you should have no problems putting this on. All the measurements should just fit. It's a little bit tight right on that edge, but that's good because that holds that in place then, and that dart gives it that little bit of a slant for it to sit on. It's better than just a plain curve, I find. One more clip. There we go. So that's all attached. I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch around the edging with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, we're stitching on the gusset now. I would change over to your zipper foot so that you can get really, really close to that seam line. Okay, so yeah, we're going to start just a couple of stitches in so we can back stitch. I find it easy to do that when I've got a zipper foot on, otherwise the fabric gathers up at the top. Okay, so we're going to take our time going around, there's no rush. If I do try to rush a gusset, it just slips and it looks terrible. Okay, so you want to flatten all that out, that gusset fabric, flatten it down as you're coming around this corner. Keep your fingers there, try and hold that, pull that fabric over so it stays right up onto the edge of the seam allowance. Okay, so we've gotten around that first part of the curve. Check to make sure your fabric is still all lined up. You can always pull from the inside and maneuver. Like I said, take your time. It's best to do this with your needle down too, because it'll help hold it in place. Okay, so mine's slipping a little bit. Okay. And here things getting knocked off my machine as I wrestle a gusset, because things go flying everywhere if it's in the way. I don't care, I just knock it off the table. Always pick it up later. Okay, we're nearly around this corner. I don't know why I paint my nails, because they always end up scratched and messed up from bag making. I guess it protects them too. So if you're not happy with this seam allowance, you find you want to go in a little closer, you can go back around it again. So that's one good thing with a gusset. Once you've done it done your first row of stitching, you don't have to leave it that way. You can go back, find out if you haven't gone close enough, unpick a little area to fix it up if there's any bit of gathering. See, I slipped a little bit there, so I've taken, but it's only about 1/8 of an inch or so. It won't, not even that, it won't matter in the whole scheme of things on the bag. Okay, so I turn it inside out and I'll show you how it looks. So your bag's starting to come together. I've got the sides on, and the darts are sticking out, and yeah, it's starting to look like a bag. This is my favourite part, and then putting it together at the end. So okay, so go and add your the other side on. Put the other side on, do the same to the interior panels with the slip pocket. Just remember to stitch when you come down on the gusset. One side has to be at least 5 inches wide with a gap. So start up at the top, stop, then start back down here and go around the corner. So measure about 4 or 5 inches for the bag to be turned through the interior later on. Also, on your interior, to make your lining fit a little better, you can start off at the 3/8 inch at the top, and then when you get down around the corners, taper down to about 1/2 inch. And then as you come back around the other side and you come up to here, taper back up to the original seam allowance of 3/8 inch, and that will give you a little bit of a tidier lining, and trim it down to about 1/4 inch after all of this too, once you've done all your seams. And then we'll be on to the next step.